This is news and commentary from America's Heartland. Welcome in. This is Heartlander News. Hi there, and welcome in to another edition of Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. Hope you're keeping up to date on all the latest news and headlines every day, all week long. Heartlandernews.com. Interesting piece from Axios today. Republican-led states have redrawn enough congressional districts to force Democrats to outperform their 2024 national results by nearly 5 percentage points if they want to retake the House. Control of the House will shape whether Trump will be allowed to govern largely unchecked, says Axios, during his final 2 years. Democrats need to flip 3 seats to win the House, assuming vacancies return to the parties that last held them. Before the redistricting push, Democrats needed to outrun Kamala Harris's 2024 margins by 3.1 points. Now they need to outrun it by 4.9. Put another way, the new maps are worth nearly 2 extra points to Republicans in the national margin. Democrats have an almost 6-point advantage over Republicans on the generic congressional ballot as of June 7th. But the redistricting push has eaten away at that. And so there's a real shot, more so than I think anybody ever first thought, that Republicans could, in fact, hang on, and this would be something historic. I mean, you can't fill one hand with the number of times that a party that's been in total control of the White House, House, and Senate in a president's first 2 years, that at least one of those houses didn't change hands. It hasn't happened historically, I think, more than 3 times. And reports are it could well happen. And why? Well, I mean, Democrats aren't exactly offering their best. We've gone over this before. Graham Plattner continues to haunt the Democrats. John Fetterman, the one Democrat who's actually unafraid to speak up and call Graham Plattner what he is. Of course, this is the guy with the Nazi tattoo, had the Nazi tattoo for 12 years on his chest, says he had no idea what it was, even though his girlfriend and other people were talking about it being a Nazi tattoo. He didn't know. But when he finally found out 12 years later that on a drunken night that he thought something looked cool and tattooed it on his chest, he only found out 12 years later that it was a Nazi tattoo. He covered it up with something else. Then, of course, there were allegations of it being rough with women. Allegations of him exposing himself on social media. Again, they're allegations, of course, but extensively written about, and not in full, as I understand it, in the New York Times, among other places. Here's John Fetterman, one Democrat, probably the only one, who's actually willing to call him out because he realizes how poisonous he is, not just to the Democrat Party, but really to all of politics. I mean, if you thought John Fetterman and his hoodie was objectionable and sort of lowering the bar for the United States Senate, bring in a guy like Graham Plattner, who can't keep his pants on and likes to tattoo Nazi paraphernalia on his chest. Here's Fetterman in number 238.
He's lied to America. He lied to my colleagues in the Senate just later this week for now trying to pretend that none of those things aren't true. But that's exactly where we are.
Okay, here's my theory. My theory is that with each of these revelations, with your Democratic colleagues, it actually enhances his stature in this strange way. Because they, for lack of a better descriptor, they want a junkyard dog. They want a street fighter who's willing to knee President Trump in the groin if given the choice. And that's if given the option. And that's the way he presents himself.
No. Being a dirtbag is not authentic. You know, being a dirtbag is being a dirtbag. You know, he's lied to America.
Being a dirtbag is being a dirtbag. Pretty simple, plainly put. James Carville, though, and other Democrats, Fetterman's about the only one that's willing to tell us the truth about Graham Plattner. He doesn't want him in their ranks, but the other Democrats, they feel like he's best positioned. And look, right now, according to certain polls, if you believe it, from Just the News, this guy, Graham Plattner, leads Susan Collins in Maine. Embraced by the party's progressive wing, the Senate Majority PAC announced in late May that it plans to spend $31 million in TV ads backing Plattner's bid to unseat Collins. $31 million that they're going to a PAC is going to spend to get this guy elected. Democrat and oyster farmer Graham Plattner continues to outpoll incumbent Susan Collins despite mounting controversies. As of Friday, Real Clear polling average for a November matchup between Plattner and Collins shows him at 7.4% ahead of Susan Collins. Now, again, I would need to see the polling on this thing. And I'm not exactly a Susan Collins fan, mind you. It's been pretty frustrating, in fact. We'll get to the SAVE Act in just a minute. Susan Collins, again, helped torpedo that over the weekend. So she's not making it easy for those of us that would like to see Graham Plattner defeated. But the Democrats are foursquare behind this guy. Here's James Carville, again, standing tall for the Nazi-decorated Graham Plattner.
The more I think about the Graham Plattner thing, the more that I see that he has value. Okay, Graham Plattner had 4 combat deployments. I don't think that, I don't want to diagnose someone, but we have to assume that that has had some residual effect on him. Somebody says PTSD, I don't know.
Clearly,
Shell
yeah.
shock. But you know what all those 4 wars have in common? Susan Collins was for all 4. Maybe it would not be the worst thing. Maybe if you were voting for governor and you had to have instant judgment or stability, maybe it's actually an affirmatively good thing that we have a combat veteran who is affected by the rigors and horror of combat on the floor of the United States Senate, serving on the Veterans Affairs Committee, serving on the Committee for Mental Health. I think that the walk that this guy has taken is a walk, is in some ways a noble walk.
Noble. Okay, so they have decided to whitewash this guy's story as nothing more than PTSD. And I'm not dismissing the severity of PTSD, of course, but if you believe that Graham Plattner's behavior is exclusively tied to PTSD, then I got a bridge to sell you. The guy's an anti-Semite. He decorated his chest with it. That's not PTSD, folks. A growing number of Jewish Democrats tell Axios they feel shunned, like unwelcome strangers in their own party. Well, gee, why might that be? As the Democrats cheerlead a Nazi sympathizer, they warn that the constant and escalating hostilities over Israel's actions in Gaza have at times veered into hostility toward Jewish Americans. A large majority of Jewish Americans vote Democrat anyway. Any shifts among Jewish voters who feel alienated from the party could impact the 2028 election. I've never understood why Jews vote Democrat. Most of them do. Pretty frustrating. The party's internal tension over Israel is rising at a time when Democrat leaders like Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, J.B. Pritzker and Rahm Emanuel and Elisa Slotkin are potential contenders for president in 2028. I didn't know the Shoney's big boy was a Jew. Did you know that, J.B. Pritzker, the Shoney's big boy? I had no idea. Didn't know he was Jewish. Okay, that's interesting. Polls show support for Israel's government for decades, a matter of bipartisan agreement, have fallen sharply among Democrats. Well, again, if you're Jewish and you still support this party, they're quite literally proud to defend and possibly elect and fund a guy who decorates his own chest for over a decade before he says, I had no idea. I mean, anyway, here's more. Ro Khanna, Mr. Moderate, the guy out there in California who's come across the aisle and voted with Republicans on this and that. Everybody loves Ro Khanna because he's Mr. Moderate. Anyway, here's what he says about Graham Plattner.
There's nothing credible at this point.
My view is that even according to the New York Times piece, they said there was no harm, no injury. There was toxicity, and there was a verbal intimidation, which I condemn. But Graham has made it clear that there was no evidence of violence. That, to me, is a red line.
So there was no harm, no injury. There was toxicity and verbal intimidation. I see. So you see, you can sternly yell and scream at your wife. You can lock her behind a closed door. You can pin her arm behind her. Aaron, congratulations. We are now given clearance from Ro Khanna. We men apparently can start handling women as long as we show no outward signs of injury to them.
Mm-hmm.
How would that work for you and your wife, do you suppose?
Yeah.
You can tell her that Ro Khanna says, as long as you don't hurt her, there's no visible signs of injury, you can do whatever you damn well please to her.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's a legal standard. I don't know. I think you're right. Don't try that at home, gentlemen. Not a legal standard by which I think we ought to hold ourselves. Unbelievable, but totally believable too. Here's Graham Plattner himself in give me number 41 here.
If I had my way, elections would last 2 months. They would be publicly funded. And if a billionaire looked at a TV ad the wrong way, we'd put him in jail.
Huh? I don't even understand what that is. If he had it his way, elections would last 2 months, I'm sure. I mean, Eric Swalwell, if he had it his way, he said elections would be something we could do over our cell phones. Yeah, of course Democrats want elections to go for 2 months. Anyway, look, here's the difficulty about Maine. Susan Collins is not exactly someone that Republicans are terribly enthused about, and for good reason. Bernie Moreno over the weekend, the Ohio senator, expressed that it was embarrassing Congress had been unable to pass the Save America Act, while countries like Colombia have incredibly accurate ways to hold safe and fair elections. Talking with Breitbart over the weekend, Moreno, who'd been in Colombia to observe their elections, spoke about how Colombia doesn't allow mail-in ballots, requires not only voter ID, but proof of national citizenship as well. He said it's kind of embarrassing from the perspective of Congress that we can't even pass the Save America Act. Let me lay it out how Colombia runs their elections. First of all, no mail-in ballots whatsoever. Colombia doesn't allow it. Single-day elections, you have to have proof of national citizenship, rather. When you vote, you got to have it with you. So it's not only voter ID, but 100% strict proof of citizenship. And if you don't have it with you, they don't even let you into the hall where you vote. All the ballots are paper ballots. The ballots are counted by hand. The results are delivered after an hour and a half after the polls close. They have election watchers that are there and vigilant. They have judges that are there disputing any claims that are made. He continued to explain that there had been around 750,000 election observers, volunteers, and roughly 13,000 from outside the country. It's an incredibly accurate way to run an election, says Moreno. My takeaway, I felt embarrassed for the United States of America. And as a senator, he said, I felt more humiliation, thinking that Congress can't even pass proof of citizenship and proof of ID to vote in American elections. And what we're seeing in California, where they're still counting ballots, it's completely insane. I couldn't agree more. And Susan Collins over the weekend happened to be one of the Republicans, one of four of them, that torpedoed an effort to get it passed again. Now, if you're not going to give Susan Collins, if you're not going to give Republicans a reason to get excited to turn out and vote for you, you're going to have the Nazi tattooed Graham Plattner as your next senator, because they're getting ready to spend a ton of money on him and promoting him. And look, it's very, very difficult, frankly, to get excited about Susan Collins. It's difficult to get behind her. It's difficult to defend her. And even so, here we are. I mean, she's maybe the best we've got. And that's frustrating, because we've got to get to a place where Republicans do better than just saying, at least we're not the Nazi tattoo guy. So, meanwhile, while talking about Israel and combat generally, something over the weekend you need to be aware of: the Israeli Air Force conducted strikes on military targets in central and western Iran. The strikes in retaliation for an Iranian missile attack against Israel. It marks a new phase in a growing escalation that started Sunday morning. It's the first time Israel has struck Iran since the April 8th ceasefire. Iran had threatened to expand its attacks and target U.S. bases in the region if Israel retaliated. Further exchanges of fire could unravel the negotiations. A U.S. defense official said the U.S. military was not involved in the strikes. The official said Israeli strikes were relatively limited. So we'll continue to watch that. Meanwhile, Scott Bessent, Street Tough Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, intends to use Iran's assets for Gulf allies to rebuild. I love this. Treasury Department planning to use assets taken from the Iranians to help assist Gulf allies in their rebuilding process. CBS News, citing a source from Bessent's office, reports over the weekend that Iran's assets are set to be used by the department in assisting Gulf allies to recuperate after damage from Tehran. The department is planning to use any authority on hand for the accessibility of Iranian assets to rebuild and repair work linked to damage caused by Iran. So that's pretty cool. Happy to hear that. The Pentagon. This was something kind of interesting over the weekend. I don't know if you saw it. Mike Lee, who's a rock-ribbed constitutionalist and one of the guys really pushing hard to get the SAVE Act passed through the Senate. Mike Lee also happens to be a Mormon, and the only reason I bring that up is Mike Lee's a little disappointed with something going on over at the Pentagon right now. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth had previously criticized the large number of faith codes, saying the system was overly complex. Did you know that the Pentagon recognizes 211 different categories of religious affiliation? Did you even know that there was such a thing as 211 categories of religious affiliation? I did not. Anyway, the Department of Defense issued new guidelines on this and changed it to 31 instead of 211. Quite a cut. The change revises a policy established in 2017. The update was outlined in a May 20th memo. According to the memo, the changes were made to streamline the Department of War collection of religious preferences. The new list will provide chaplains with clear, readily available information that will better enable them to anticipate the religious support needs of service members and to provide religious support activities that align with service members. And here again, I only can lean on our esteemed producer, Aaron, and his time serving. I don't know how much you encountered this. Did you know that there were 211 different religious delineations while you were enlisted, Aaron, in the United States military? 211.
I did, because I was a religious program specialist. I served under chaplains.
Oh,
and
man, am I glad we tapped into this. I'd forgotten you told me this. So that seems impossible. How do you know 211 different religions?
Well, I didn't know it was that many specifically, but I did know there was quite a few. I mean, I specifically only learned how to set up services and support, a handful.
Whoa.
But I knew there were so many chaplains.
So like what kind of, just so people can understand this and why, do you think, well, let me ask you this. Since you're not in anymore, do you agree with the Department of Defense streamlining this? Do you think 211 down to 31? Do you have any opinion on that, given what your work was?
Yeah, and I think it's to combat things like, wasn't one of, I think one of the religions that was recognized was like Jedi stuff, and like another one was like the joke religion that was the spaghetti monster thing,
okay, yes. So some of them were
people trolling
jokes.
True religions, trying to be like, well, if you can do this, then I could do this. So I understand where it's coming from a little bit, I think.
Guys like Mike Lee are upset because they took a bunch of faiths, I guess denominations and other things, Catholicism and the like, and they put them under the category of Christian, right? So, which is true. So there are a lot of different denominations within the Christian faith. They did not include Mormonism in that. They took the Mormon faith, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they made it its own line item instead of tucking it into Christianity. And so Mike Lee took exception with that. He said that the Mormon faith is every bit as Christian as any of the others. Now, I think there are a healthy number of Christians that would have a robust debate with the senator about that. The senator over the weekend was saying, you read the Book of Mormon, read it cover to cover, and you tell me that it's not every bit as Christian as everybody else. I mean, I have not read the Book of Mormon, to be clear. I have sat through a few lectures and seminars and sermons on Mormonism, and they're great people by and large. I have no qualms or quibbling. I'm not quibbling with the Book of Mormon or the Mormon faith. If that's their deal, that's their deal. God bless America, whatever. But as a Christian, it's a weird. They're not saying they're not acknowledging Mormons, by the way. at the Department of Defense. That's not my understanding. They listed, instead of 211, they listed 31. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is one of the 31, but they just didn't tuck it into Christianity, as I understand it. But anyway, just wanted to call your attention to that. That is one of the big controversies of the week. There is a stack today on energy that I wanted to call your attention to. One of the things that you may or may not know about, if you're in Virginia, for instance, I know you know about data centers, and probably you have heard about the great debate on data centers. In the Midwest, here in America's heartland, and you can read a lot about this at heartlandernews.com, data centers have become a flashpoint, a huge point of contention. And bottom line, here's what you're talking about. Hundreds, thousands of acres of farmland throughout the Midwest. Right now, row crops like corn and soybeans, not as profitable. A lot of farmers have decided the land that they're farming is more valuable just to sell it, frankly, than to grow anything on it. And so along come these big tech firms, and they're telling farmers in the middle of nowhere with these huge, huge acreages, hey, we really would like to build a data center here. And they stroke them a check. These farmers, I'm sure it's generational money. I mean, it's the kind of thing, some of these farmers are seeing checks waved in front of them that could be money for generations of their family, probably. And so one can understand that a farmer would be tempted to sell his or her land to a data center developer. Problem is, they often plop up in unincorporated areas of a county where local county government is getting an earful from their residents around that farmland, or maybe in the town near that farmland, because what's the concern? The concern that these data centers are drawing from the water table. They're using up a tremendous amount of water and resources, and the concern that it's going to make everybody's energy costs go ever higher. That is a real worry amongst many in the Midwest right now about these data centers. So what do? You got farmers who own this land privately, lock, stock, and barrel. They can enter into a private transaction with a data center company, all they'd like. Can counties, can citizens weigh in to stop it? Well, perhaps if there's a draw on the energy grid, transparency is what is needed here. And data center people who are building them, they're not really being very transparent with the community. However, what they are promising is not only generational wealth, perhaps to the landowner, they're also promising in taxes that they'll pay to the county, huge sums of money. I mean, I've read and heard from some public officials that talk about these rural school districts and rural towns that are kind of dying on the vine. They could be infused with money, millions of dollars for years to come if these data centers are allowed to come in. So it's quite a catch-22. Making utilities more expensive, drawing utilities from smaller communities, that's a bad thing. They're concerned about water quality. They're concerned about noise and light pollution and other things, all understandable concerns. And big tech has not done a great job allaying those concerns, but there's a huge potential windfall of revenue coming into these communities. That's something a lot of elected leaders can't ignore. So this is going to be a debate for our time, because AI is only getting, in fact, I read a UN report over the weekend. This is hilarious. Are you ready for this? And this is coming to a theater near you soon, is going to be a discussion about AI use and the responsible use of AI. Aaron, you're going to love this. You use AI in your work, don't you? You use it, I guess, technically, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very frequently.
Let me ask you this. This is true. I read this from a UN report that they're obviously, the more you put into AI, the harder AI has to churn, the more energy is burned to produce whatever the thing is. So if AI was first used kind of like Google or whatever, or if I enter hey, give me the answer to, what was President Garfield's favorite ice cream, whatever, and so AI, so you use it like Google or something, or maybe to rewrite a paper, or, hey, write a paragraph on, D-Day. AI would spit that out. But now people are putting in whole videos, right? People are taking video, they're taking audio, they're taking big, huge projects, and they're putting it to AI to spit it out. It takes more and more energy. So the UN report has just been released talking about all the energy that's being used and how much of the world's energy is going to go to AI projected by 2030. And they're saying it's going to be like 40%. of global energy will be used in AI related work, simply because the volume of it and how hard people are making it work. And so there was someone quoted in this story. Get ready for this, Aaron. I'm just warning you, if you make your living, if you in your career are using AI, get ready, coming to a theater near you soon. Bureaucrats who say, we might need to start looking at economy of words and kind of policing what you're putting into AI. So instead of saying something like, please look up the number of stoplights in Toledo, Ohio, you should just type number of stoplights, Toledo, Ohio. Take out the extra words, because every extra word you use is more energy burned in AI. I'm not making this up. It sounds ridiculous, but this is actually what this report said over the weekend from the AP. Word economy. So coming soon, I would predict, Aaron, if this continues and people use AI at the volume they are, faster and more, they'll start policing how much you can put into it, or maybe charging you for it. So you already pay maybe for an AI service. I can imagine someday soon you will start paying for the volume of words you use, or paying for what you're putting into it. Like you've got to pay a tiered system. I bet that's coming. What do you say? It's like toll roads. I think that's what's coming for AI.
Yeah, I mean, like Anthropic already sort of does that with their tiered plans and like X amount of usage.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't use enough of it. I use ChatGPT and that's about it.
And I have read like those. Are you a fan of The Office?
Oh,
Do you
yes.
ever watch it?
I've watched some of it.
When Kevin tries to sound like a caveman by removing words, and I have read legit articles like people do that to try and save on usage. Like, you know, you save 0.1% of your usage on every prompt. That means, wow, I have extra usage at the. I don't know. I just don't bother with it.
This is going to be. And you're younger than me, but I remember when recycling came on strong, and recycling was the huge thing. Everybody said, you know, here's you need a bin for the glass, you need a bin for the plastics, you need a bin. And then people started figuring out that it all wound up in the dump anyway, by and large.
Yeah.
Recycling this is the new recycling. That's what it is.
I mean, that still happens here at my condo. We have a dumpster for recycling and a dumpster for trash. Everybody is up in arms about if they see a trash bag, you know, and then the same truck comes, empties one, and then empties the other and drives away.
That's right. It's just something to make people feel good. So it's all about control. So those of you who are AI enthusiasts, just know there are two issues. Number one, yes, it takes a tremendous amount of power. Two, that means it's going to take data centers. You're going to have to build these suckers. They need them. Where are you going to build them, though? So I'll wrap up today by saying big tech built so many data centers in Ireland that the sector uses a fifth of the country's electricity, more than all of Ireland's urban homes put together. For much of the past 3 years, the country barred new data centers to ensure its electricity grid could cope. And now Ireland is trying a new approach. Bring your own power. New data centers and expansions of existing facilities are welcome, but must have their own power plants on site or contracts for new, largely renewable sources of energy to be produced nearby. They can't just grab juice from the grid. Good. Yes. And that is what President Trump has been advocating for all along, that these data centers build their own kind of nuclear source for power. I'm for that. I think that's exactly appropriate. And that is what we should push for. If these people can create their own sources of power, they should. And if they can, as I understand, there are advancements now where water they can use in a recyclable way. Instead of just drawing new water and pumping out the old, they can actually just recycle the same water, like a swimming pool, and not have to draw new water. Look, it's undeniable we're going to need data centers. Where they're put, going to be a huge debate. How they're operated, going to be a huge debate. But what we don't want, if we're going to go this direction, and I know a lot of people hate AI, but a lot of people use it and use it to great effect right now, and it helps them right now a lot. I know a lot of people who use it and count on it. Here's what you don't want. If you're one of those that are using it and you count on it for your living, if this dynamic doesn't change, I can imagine a day very soon where you're going to be told you have a limit to the amount of AI usage that you can do in the course of a day or a week. And then you'll have to pay more if you'd like access to it. Sort of a toll road for AI. It's coming. Sure, as I sit here, that nothing's ever free. So the more access we can grant to it, the more power we can provide for it, the more power that is self-sustaining by these companies, the more these companies explain to communities the benefits of them. There needs to be a heavy discussion about this right now. This kind of I'm for it, I'm against it thing, that misses the point. It's not a simple matter of whether I'm for or against AI and data centers. It's here. So it's really not a debate. It's now, how's it going to be powered? How's it going to be used? And what's going to be the expectation? Got to start having some realistic conversations about it. I think the president is deeply interested in that. We are too, and we'll continue to cover it here. So we'll continue to stay on top of that and many, many other stories. If you go to heartlandernews.com today, you will read great news stories each day and all week long, written by fantastic journalists from here in America's heartland. Meanwhile, be sure to keep up to date on all the latest news throughout the week at not just heartlandernews.com, but as we publish this show here. Subscribe to the Heartlander News channel here on YouTube. Give us a like. Hope you'll give us a comment. Love to hear your thoughts. And we'll see you back here next time on Heartlander News.